It wasn't love at first sight. It was hate. Pure, academic, meticulously documented hate. The kind you feel deep in your bones when someone threatens to take something that you built. That's what Nolan Jacobs did the day he walked into debate club wearing a suit jacket too fitted for a public high school senior, with a smug little smile like he already owned the place. Before him, I was the undefeated king of that room. I was the guy everyone turned to when arguments got messy, the one teachers emailed with pride. State champ. Letter of recommendation from a Harvard alum. My picture was literally on the bulletin board. And then he showed up. He transferred in mid-semester, some last-minute move from a charter school across town. Rumor had it he'd already been offered spots at 2 Ivies and a summer internship at a political think tank. His opening night, he didn't just participate in a mock round. He destroyed one of our best members with nothing but a smirk and a 3-point structure so clean it belonged in a textbook. Our coach introduced him to the group like he was some gift from the gods. Everyone, meet Nolan Jacobs. He's going to elevate our team to the next level. That night, I went home and punched a pillow. We weren't friends. We weren't even friendly. We were opponents, unofficially co-captains, officially sworn enemies. We never said it out loud, but everyone felt the tension. Every practice turned into a pissing contest. Every meeting, a fight to get the last word. I'd talk. He'd raise an eyebrow. He'd present a case. I'd find a flaw in it just to spite him. He'd sit too close during team meetings. I'd move my chair. Then he'd stretch, just casually letting his arm brush against mine like it was no big deal. But it was a big deal, because every time he got close, I felt like I was on fire. We never acknowledged it. Not the glances. Not the way his voice dropped when he debated me and only me. Not the fact that, during a trip to regionals, we spent the entire 3-hour bus ride sitting in silence, with our thighs pressed together, neither of us moving. But then came nationals, a 5-day trip to DC. The two of us were roomed together. Of course, it's just one room, our coach said, like it wasn't the worst idea in the history of ever. The first night, nothing happened. He showered. I pretended to be asleep when he came out in only a towel. We didn't speak. The second night, we argued over who got the desk to prep. I said I needed it more. He said I could type just as fast on the floor. By night 3, I was a mess. The tension between us had hit a new level. Every move he made felt loaded. Every glance, like a dare. We hadn't touched. Not really. But I could feel something building. That night, he stayed up later than usual. I just crawled into bed when I heard his voice behind me. You always sleep on the left? I rolled over. He was standing near the window, shirtless, backlit by the DC skyline. What does that even mean? He shrugged. Just trying to figure you out. I'm not a debate case, Nolan. No, he said, walking slowly toward me. But you are an argument. I sat up. What the hell does that mean? It means, he said, eyes locked on mine, you've been driving me insane since the first day I met you. He was closer now. I could see the sharp line of his collarbone, the rise and fall of his chest. And what? This is your victory speech? I said, my voice more breathless than I wanted it to be. He didn't answer. He just stepped forward, reached down, and tugged my blanket aside. Then, without a word, he climbed onto the bed. I didn't move. Not because I was scared, though maybe I was, a little, but because something in the way Nolan looked at me made my whole body freeze. Not out of fear, out of anticipation. He was calm, composed, as always, but his eyes had that sharp edge I'd only seen in competition. Focused, controlled. Like this was a debate round, and I was the only point left to dismantle. Nolan, I said quietly as he settled beside me on the bed. What the hell are you doing? Relax. His voice dropped into something smoother than usual, a notch above a whisper. I'm not going to do anything you don't want me to. He didn't touch me. Not yet. He just lay there, on top of the comforter, a few inches away, like it was the most natural thing in the world to crawl into bed with the guy you've been trying to intellectually destroy for months. "This is a terrible idea," I muttered. "Probably," he said, "but we're both already in the room, and we're both not sleeping." I turned toward him, half expecting him to laugh it off like he was just messing with me, trying to throw me off for tomorrow's final round. But his expression didn't have any of that usual smugness. It was unreadable, quiet. "You hate me," I said. He smiled. "That's what you think. You've been trying to one-up me since you got here." "Yeah," he said, "because I couldn't stop thinking about you." I blinked. "That doesn't even make sense." "It does to me. I wanted to argue. That's what we did, right? Pick apart each other's logic until one of us walked away victorious. But there was no audience now. No moderator. Just the low hum of the hotel air conditioning and the rising heat in my chest. "You said I'm an argument," I said slowly. "What did you mean by that?" He shifted, and the bed creaked under his weight. "It means I can't stop going over you in my head. Every detail, every look, every time you beat me to a rebuttal, or tore my logic apart, or stood there smug like you had me figured out." I swallowed hard. "I don't have you figured out," I said. "No," he murmured, "but I think you want to." Then, finally, he reached out. Just one hand, his fingers brushing the edge of my shirt where it met my ribs. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't even forward. It was cautious. A question, not a command. I didn't pull away. "You're not straight," I said. Not a question, more like a realization. "Not when it comes to you." My heart slammed against my ribs. That same heart I'd trained to stay calm under pressure, to regulate during rapid-fire cross-examinations, was now completely useless. I could barely breathe. "I don't know what this is," I said, "or if it's a game, or—" "It's not a game," his voice was steady. "You think I'd climb into bed with you before nationals just to mess with your head?" I stared at him. "Yes, actually." He laughed softly. "Fair." His fingers slipped under the hem of my shirt this time. Not far. Just enough that I felt the heat of his skin against mine. It was deliberate, but not demanding. My brain screamed at me to say something clever, something to regain control. But I didn't want to control this. Not anymore. "I kept thinking you hated me," I admitted, breathlessly. "I think I did," he said, "but only because you got to me in a way no one else ever has." Silence settled over us, a strange, expectant quiet. I watched his hand move, slow, careful, as he pushed my shirt up just slightly, resting his palm on my bare stomach. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm aware." "I can stop." I hesitated. Then I shook my head. "No, just don't rush." He nodded, and for a moment, neither of us moved. It was surreal, lying there in a sterile hotel room, tangled up in feelings I didn't know I had, with the last person I ever thought I'd share a bed with. When he finally leaned in, his forehead brushed mine, not a kiss, just contact. A grounding point. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I let it out in a shaky exhale. "You feel real?" he asked, voice low. "I think so." He laughed gently. "You know what's crazy?" "What?" "This whole time I thought if I beat you at nationals, I'd finally stop obsessing over you. Like somehow proving I could win would fix it. And now, I don't care about winning." "Liar," he grinned. "Okay, I care a little, but I care more about this." He tugged my shirt up a little more, and I let him. My hands found the hem of his as well. Unsure, testing. He didn't flinch. He helped me pull it over his head. In the low light from the window, I could see the outline of his collarbone, the dip of his chest. He wasn't built like a gym bro, more like a runner, lean, defined, soft in ways that still made my throat dry. "God," I muttered, "we are going to be a mess tomorrow." "Probably," he said. "But tonight." His fingers trailed along my side, slowly, deliberately. "Tonight, you're not my rival. If someone had told me 6 months ago that I'd be shirtless in bed with Nolan Jacobs, the same guy who once accused me of misquoting a Supreme Court case in front of the entire regional judging panel, I would have laughed, maybe even gagged. But here I was. My shirt was on the floor, his too. And the weirdest part? It didn't feel wrong. It didn't even feel rushed. It felt like something that had been quietly brewing in the background all year, just waiting for one of us to stop pretending we didn't feel it. "I still don't get you," I whispered, staring at the ceiling. He was lying next to me, propped up on one elbow, his fingers idly brushing along my ribs like he was tracing a map. "What's there to get? You hated me." "I wanted to hate you," he corrected, "but you were too." He paused, frowning slightly. "You were too you." "That's not helpful," he laughed under his breath. "You were cocky, smart, relentless. Every time I thought I had the perfect argument, you were already 2 steps ahead of me." "Okay, now you're just flirting." "I'm not," he said. "You infuriated me, but every time we argued, I left wanting more." My mouth was suddenly dry. "You're very composed for someone who just admitted that," Nolan shrugged. "That's what debate teaches you. Keep your voice steady, no matter how bad you're freaking out inside." "Are you freaking out inside?" He looked at me for a long moment. "A little." "Good." We both smiled. The tension, weirdly, was softer now. Less sharp, less like a blade, and more like static. Electric, buzzing, but warm. He leaned down, slowly, giving me time to move if I wanted. I didn't. Our mouths met in a kiss that wasn't urgent, but full. Real. He tasted like cinnamon gum and something else. Something him. I could feel his breath catch when my hand slid along his side, and for a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. No tournament, no rivalry, no coach waiting to see if we'd bring home trophies tomorrow. Just us, tangled in hotel sheets and years of mutual tension. He pulled back just a bit, resting his forehead against mine. "This is crazy," he murmured. I nodded. "Yeah, but it doesn't feel like a mistake." "No," I said, a little too quickly. "It really doesn't." There was a knock at the wall, 2 firm taps, then a muffled, "You guys better be sleeping. We've got early check-in at the tournament site." Coach Parker. Of course. We both froze like we were caught cheating on a test, then burst into quiet laughter, smothering it against each other's shoulders. Nolan shook his head. If he knew, he'd have a stroke. I kind of want to tell him, just to see his face. "Please don't," I said, horrified. All right, he grinned, leaning back into me. "We'll keep it professional, for now." I rolled my eyes, but didn't push him away when he nestled in closer. His skin was warm against mine, his breath even. I could feel the tension slowly melting off both of us, replaced by something else entirely, something I didn't have a name for yet. For a few minutes we just laid there, breathing, steady, comfortable in a way I didn't expect. Then he shifted again, propping himself up slightly and looking down at me. "You know," he said, voice lower now, "I've imagined this." I looked up at him, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. "Seriously?" He nodded. "Every time we fought, every time you raised your hand to cut in during my cross-exam, every time you quoted some article before I could. You imagined this?" I gestured between us, our tangled bodies, the barely there sheets, the air that was still warm from tension. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I imagined getting close enough to shut you up without arguing." My stomach tightened. "That's not fair," I said. "Why not?" "Because I've spent the last 6 months telling myself you were just an arrogant jackass with good hair." He smiled. And now I don't know if I want to kiss you or punch you." "Why not both?" I shoved him lightly, but he caught my wrist, grinning. "That cockiness," I said. "God, it's so annoying. But now you know where it comes from." "Where?" He leaned in, his lips brushing just under my ear. "It comes from wanting you this bad." And just like that, I was gone. I pulled him down into another kiss. Less careful this time. Our mouths moved like we were making up for lost time. His hand gripped my waist, my fingers tangled in his hair, and the line between rivalry and desire disappeared like it had never been there at all. We didn't go all the way, not that night, but we didn't sleep much either. When I finally drifted off, sometime after 3 a.m., his arm was around me and his breath was warm on the back of my neck. For the first time in a long time, I didn't care who won tomorrow. I just wanted to wake up next to him again. I woke up to sunlight hitting my face and the faint hum of traffic outside our hotel window. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was or who was lying against me. Then it all came rushing back. The late night kisses, the skin, the way Nolan had curled into me like it was the most natural thing in the world. His hand was still resting against my stomach, warm and familiar. "Morning," came a groggy voice behind me. I turned slightly and looked over my shoulder. Nolan's hair was a mess, way less perfect than usual, and he had that just woke up face that made my chest do something I didn't quite know how to describe. "Hey," I said, voice rough from sleep. "You always cuddle your opponents?" He blinked a few times, then smirked. "Only the ones who keep me up all night." "You're disgusting. And you kissed me." I didn't argue. I couldn't. Because, yeah, I did. I kissed him, more than once, and I'd do it again. But now, with daylight pouring in and reality crawling back under the covers with us, the weight of the day hit me like a freight train. Nationals. The final round. We were going head to head, and we were still sharing one bed. I sat up, rubbing my face. "We need to get dressed. Breakfast's in 20, and coach will kill us if we're late for warm-ups." Nolan didn't move. He stayed there, watching me with an unreadable expression. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "Just, this feels weird." I raised an eyebrow. "Weird like regret?" "No, weird like I want to do it again. And I'm terrified you're going to pretend last night didn't happen the second we get into that conference room." I swallowed. "I'm not pretending anything, but we've got to focus today." He nodded, slow. "Yeah, I know." We got dressed in silence after that. Not tense, not exactly awkward, just heavy. He pulled his shirt over his head, and I caught a glimpse of the faint scratch I'd left on his side. I looked away before my brain could go places it had no business going right now. By the time we got downstairs, the rest of the team was already halfway through pancakes and eggs in the hotel breakfast area. Coach Parker barely glanced up from his clipboard when we slid into our seats. "Final pairings are posted," he said, tapping the page. And guess what? Everyone turned. I already knew what was coming. "Team A," he said, looking at me, "versus Team C." His eyes flicked to Nolan. "Our own debate darlings are facing off." Again. Murmurs around the table. A few oohs and some snickers from the younger members. They loved this. Me versus Nolan was basically the club's version of a pay-per-view event. "Play nice," Coach added, mostly as a joke. I felt Nolan's knee brush mine under the table. Not accidental. A silent nudge. We both nodded. "I'll try," I muttered. Practice was a blur. We broke into teams, ran drills, and by the time it was our turn to face off, the air between us was thick with tension. Not the heated, flirtatious kind from last night. This was focus, strategy, control. But there was something different in how we argued now. Nolan wasn't trying to win with charm. He was razor sharp, yes, but he held back from the usual digs. No smirking, no smug glances, just clean, brutal logic. And I matched it, word for word. Our coach watched us carefully, occasionally jotting notes, but said nothing. When the mock round ended, the room went quiet. Then Parker said, "That was the best damn sparring I've seen from either of you." No one clapped, but everyone stared. We packed up in silence, avoiding each other's eyes until we were back in the hallway. Then Nolan spoke. "I didn't pull punches," he said. "I know," I replied. "And you still kept up." I looked at him. "You thought I wouldn't?" He shook his head. "I thought last night might, I don't know, complicate it." "It did," I admitted, but not in a bad way. He stepped a little closer. So what now? We do what we came here to do, I said. We win. He smiled at that. Not a smirk, a real smile. And after that? I hesitated, glancing around. The hallway was empty. Everyone else had gone back to their rooms, so I leaned in, my voice low. After that, we talk. And maybe we figure out what the hell last night means. Nolan's eyes flicked to my lips, then back up. Good. He reached up and adjusted my collar with a grin. Because I didn't plan on undressing you just once. The final round of nationals was scheduled for 3:15 p.m. By 2:45, the hotel's conference room had been transformed into something that looked almost theatrical. A long row of judges sat stiffly at the front, clipboards in hand. Rows of folding chairs stretched behind them, already filling with spectators. Parents, teammates, former winners, and a few reporters from the school newspaper. I sat in the prep room with my partner, Amanda, going over our final arguments, but my attention kept drifting to the door. Every few minutes, Nolan would pass by the glass panel, talking with his own partner, Ethan. He looked completely calm. Of course he did. That was his whole thing. Confidence like a second skin. But I knew better now. I knew about the guy who curled into me after lights out, who confessed things with barely a whisper, who kissed me like it wasn't a choice but a need. You okay? Amanda asked. Huh? She raised an eyebrow. You've zoned out twice. Are you nervous? I nodded, grateful for the excuse. Yeah. Just want this over with. She didn't press. Amanda was brilliant in round, but chill outside of it. That's why we worked. She didn't need to know I'd been halfway undressed by our opponent less than 12 hours ago. At 3:10, a tournament official came in and gave us the signal. Showtime. The room was already warm when we entered. I adjusted my blazer, cleared my throat, and took my place at the left podium. Nolan was directly across from me. He looked sharp as hell. Black button-down, navy tie, that same slight smirk he always wore before round one, except now I could tell the difference. It wasn't arrogance. It was nerves. Not obvious, but there, buried behind his perfect posture and poised expression. He looked at me once briefly, and that glance said everything. We were still us. Still opponents. Still determined to out-argue the other. But something had shifted. It wasn't about hate anymore. The judge cleared her throat. Affirmative. You may begin when ready. Amanda started strong, opening with a crisp summary of our case, federal climate policy reform. We'd refined our angle for weeks, anticipating every attack point, tailoring it to the national stage. Then, it was Nolan's turn. The moment he stepped up to the podium, the room changed. He had presence, like always. But this time, I watched every move differently. Every flick of his hands, every pause in his speech. I knew that mouth. I knew that voice up close, which made it 10 times harder to focus. The round moved fast. Too fast. Each cross-examination was a blur of logic. Rebuttals. Fire. We went at each other hard. Not personal, but precise. Two people who knew exactly how the other thought. Anticipating moves. Shifting mid-sentence. At one point, he made a joke about the inefficiency of half-baked policies, and half the room laughed. I smiled before I could stop myself. He noticed. And for a split second, we weren't debaters. We were just two idiots who'd somehow fallen into something real. When closing statements came, Amanda wrapped us up clean, and Nolan followed, deadly calm. And then, it was over. The judges gathered. We were told to wait in the prep room. The moment the door shut behind us, Amanda exhaled hard. Holy shit, that was brutal. Yeah, I said, my heart still pounding. I think we got it, she added. But even if we didn't, that was the best we've ever done. I nodded, but my eyes were locked on the floor. Nolan's words were still echoing in my head. His tone, his rhythm, his damn ability to get under my skin. Then a knock. We were called back in. Everyone was seated again, hushed. The lead judge stood up with the results in hand. In what was one of the most competitive final rounds we've seen at Nationals, she began. The decision was close, a 4-3 split. I stopped breathing. She looked directly at us. And the winning team is pause. Team C. The room burst into applause. Nolan and Ethan sighed. My partner turned to me with a forced smile. Damn, so close. I nodded. You were amazing. She shrugged. So were you. As the clapping died down, Nolan caught my eye from across the room. He didn't smirk. He didn't gloat. He just mouthed 2 words. Talk later? I nodded. 15 minutes later, after the medals were handed out, the photo ops finished, and our coach gave us the standard, "So proud of you all," pep talk. I slipped out the back. Nolan was already waiting outside the hotel, jacket slung over one shoulder, his hair still perfectly in place despite the chaos. You good? He asked. Yeah. You? He chuckled. I feel like I just survived a car crash. My brain's still vibrating. We stood in silence for a beat. Then I said it. You were amazing. So were you. You beat me. He nodded, slowly. I didn't want that to change anything. I raised an eyebrow. Me losing? No, us. I studied him. Do you want this to be a thing? I asked. I want something, he said. Last night wasn't just adrenaline. I don't know what this is yet, but I want to find out. He took a step closer, lowered his voice. And next time I undress you, he said softly, it's not going to be between debate rounds. We didn't kiss outside the hotel. Even though the sun was setting perfectly behind Nolan, casting a warm glow on his too pretty face. Even though we stood so close I could smell his cologne, a clean, citrusy scent that somehow made my knees want to buckle. Even though my fingers itched to touch his jaw, trace that cocky mouth that had once been my worst nightmare, now the only thing I could think about. We didn't kiss. Instead, he reached out, took my hand, quiet, careful, and just held it. Like that was more honest than anything a kiss could say right now. Come with me, he said, so I did. We walked past the main street, down the block from the hotel. No words for a bit, just the rhythmic fall of our steps and the sound of cars humming by. Nolan led us to a tiny park behind the venue, just a bench, a tree, a patch of grass, and collapsed onto the bench like the day had finally caught up to him. I sat beside him. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Then he turned to me. So, he said slowly, you're not mad? I laughed. That you beat me? He nodded. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little crushed. But no, I'm not mad. Why not? I looked at him. Because you didn't beat me. Instead of kissing me, you did both. That made him smile. He leaned back, stretching his arms across the bench, which conveniently meant one landed behind me. We both pretended not to notice. You know, he said, when I transferred here, everyone kept telling me you were the guy to beat. You were this myth, like some debate god. I snorted. Okay. No, seriously. I expected you to be all ego and nothing else. But then I watched you in that first round. You destroyed me, I said. I didn't destroy you. I just surprised you. Still felt like destruction. He turned toward me, serious now. But after that, I couldn't stop thinking about you. About how fast your brain works. About how every time I thought I had the upper hand, you found another angle. You're really laying it on now, I said, trying to deflect the warmth rising in my chest. I mean it, he said, voice quiet. You're the only person who's ever made me work for it, made me want to be better. That stopped me. I looked down at our joined hands, then back up at him. Nolan? Yeah? Are you always this intense when you like someone? He smiled. Only when it scares me. I opened my mouth to say something, but then his thumb moved. Just a small stroke over the back of my hand, and my brain blanked. I wasn't used to this. Being wanted by someone like him, someone who used to make my stomach twist for the wrong reasons, and was now making it twist for all the right ones. I have to ask, I said, clearing my throat, is this A one-time thing? He frowned. What do you mean? Last night. Nationals, emotions running high, situational heat. He leaned in, close enough that his breath hit my cheek. You think I kissed you because I lost control? I raised an eyebrow. Didn't you? He grinned. Yeah, but not because of the tournament. I've been losing control since October. I froze. That long? He nodded. I didn't know what to say to that. Not because I didn't feel the same, but because I hadn't noticed. Or maybe I'd refused to notice. I'm kind of a dumbass, I admitted. No, he said. You just thought I hated you. You gave off very hateable vibes. He laughed, then tilted his head slightly. So, what now? I took a breath. Now we go back to school. Finish senior year. Figure it out? He nodded, thoughtful. I meant what I said last night, he said. About wanting this. About wanting you. Even if we're not competing anymore, he smiled. That'll just give us more time for other things. I rolled my eyes, but I didn't pull away when he leaned in. This time, we did kiss. Not rushed. Not messy. Just soft and slow and real. The kind of kiss that made time slow down. That said, yes, this is happening. Yes, it's terrifying. Yes, I want more. We parted with a breathless laugh, foreheads resting against each other. Debate practice gonna be weird now, I said. Speak for yourself. I'm going to love watching you squirm. You're evil, he grinned. You love it. I didn't argue. We kept things quiet when we got back to campus. Not because we were ashamed, if anything the opposite, but because high school is a factory of rumors, and the last thing we needed was every hallway conversation suddenly turning into, did you hear about the debate boys? So we went about our lives. Separately, outwardly. Inwardly, we were tangled in ways no one else saw. He still argued with me during practice, still raised his eyebrow when I made a sloppy point, still leaned too close during strategy sessions, whispering jokes into my ear that made me snort laugh when I was supposed to be serious. But now, between those moments, we texted late at night, snuck out after club meetings, found each other behind the library or in his car or in my room when my roommate was gone. It wasn't just about making out, though there was a lot of that, not gonna lie. It was about seeing him drop the act. Nolan Jacobs, cool and composed, was the most ridiculous dork when he relaxed. He overused air quotes. He hummed when he brushed his teeth. He talked in full monologues about food trucks. And he looked at me like I was something he chose, not just stumbled into. We were still figuring it out. Some nights were messy. We got into an argument once because I rolled my eyes at him during a club meeting. He accused me of minimizing him in public. I accused him of reading too far into things. We didn't talk for 2 days, but then he showed up outside my house with a matcha latte and a note that just said, I hate when I can't tell if you're shutting me out or just thinking too hard. Please let me in. I let him in. And not just into the house. Prom came and went. He kissed me after, when we ditched the party early and ended up under a cheap blanket in the backseat of his car, parked behind the tennis courts. It wasn't like the movies. The air smelled like pollen and Axe body spray. His tie was wrinkled, and we both had glitter on our faces from someone's boutonniere. But I remember thinking, this is real. This is mine. The night before graduation, we stayed up talking until 3 a.m. We lay on the floor of his room, surrounded by boxes and half-packed bags. Are you scared? He asked. About what? Everything changing. Kind of. He nodded, staring at the ceiling. I don't want this to be one of those things that fades, that we look back on and go, remember that one weird senior year thing? It wasn't weird, I said. It was the best part. He turned his head, looked at me. You mean that? Yeah, and I did. I meant it when I kissed him right there on the floor, my hand sliding up under his hoodie. I meant it when I pressed him down, heard his breath catch, felt him tremble slightly beneath me. I meant it when I whispered, I want to remember this. Every part. That night, we didn't rush. There was no loud music, no clock ticking, no threat of someone walking in, just us. unrushed, undressed, undeniably into each other. And when it was over, he didn't roll away. He stayed curled up beside me, hand resting on my chest, listening to my heart slow. "I never told anyone before," he said quietly, "about liking guys." I touched his fingers. "Do you want to?" "Yeah, eventually, just not yet." "That's okay." He looked up at me. "You were the first one I wanted to be honest with." That hit me harder than anything he'd ever said in debate. We both ended up at colleges across the country from each other. But we texted, called, visited when we could. Some weeks, it was easy. Some weeks, it wasn't. We didn't have the daily rhythm anymore. No practice rounds, no club meetings, no shared classes. Just FaceTime, red-eye flights, and the memory of what we'd built from tension and chaos and something that looked a lot like fate. Eventually, Nolan came out. Not with a big announcement, just started introducing me as his boyfriend. Eventually, I did too, not with some dramatic gesture, just with honesty. Looking back, it's wild to think how it all started. A raised hand, a rebuttal, a rolled eye, a rivalry that wasn't about hatred at all, but about noticing someone a little too much and pretending it was annoyance. Until it wasn't. Until I was in his bed, and he was in mine. Until the tension snapped and the truth spilled out, not as a confession, but as something physical, undeniable. We were rivals in debate club. Now he's undressing me like he's done it 100 times. Like it's second nature. And every time he does, I remember why I lost the final round. Because some arguments aren't meant to be won. They're meant to be felt. And this is the only one I never want to walk away from.